Hello to anyone watching. This is another episode of Unplanned with Phil Bland. I think this is episode 30. And today I'm going to be talking to Jordan from White Label Studios. So I'm just going to bring him in and let him do a little introduction of the work, his background and some of the work that the studios do. We're going to get into a load of topics today about, building businesses or finding purpose or, finding the right people to work with or design. So hope you enjoy the session. Hey, Jordan.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm all right. Thanks for joining me. So we were just having a little chat before Jordan came on. So I guess, Jordan, you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you came to work on White Label Studios?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will do. So, obviously, I'm Jordan. White Label Studio is a graphic design agency that do things in a really, really different way. We actually started the business, myself and the other co-founder, back in June 2019. So we're a relatively new business to the market, to be honest. So as you can imagine, setting up in 2019, come straight into the pandemic after a few months of setting up. However, fast forward to today. So we're just approaching sort of about the 2.5 year mark. And there's just over 30 of us working here. So we've seen some really, really quick growth after a interesting period in business for a lot of people. So yeah, that's a very, very high level overview to start with. And then just jumping into the sort of nicheness of the business and what makes us a little bit different to anyone else, and sort of we can go on to the growth side of things after. But essentially, as opposed to being a typical design agency where projects are run one by one or project by project, essentially, we're a little bit of a different solution to businesses, where so that people essentially can use us on a monthly basis, and essentially we try and integrate our designers into our clients' teams. So we've got a really sort of unique way of working, which almost turns design into a bit of a subscription-based model, which has been part and parcel into sort of how it's grown so quickly to date, almost. So yeah, that's how we're different, essentially.
So how does that work? Do people pay do they pay a regular fee per month and then they can dip into the design as and when they need it?
They pay a regular fee. It actually works in a slightly more regimented way, essentially. So the way we like to portray our business is essentially it's very, very similar to hiring a part-time designer. And sometimes we feel a little bit like a recruitment agency, because essentially we're pairing clients that come on board, listen to their sort of requirements, the headaches, understand their personality and the brand a little bit more. And then we'll assign a designer from our team that's going to be best suited to them. So it's somebody that's going to be working with them every single day. And as opposed to sort of almost having a retainer based model where there's a set amount of hours, but it's actually in blocks of time every single day. So essentially, each of our plans start from 2 hours a day with the designer. So it's ideal for companies that probably on the edge of considering that they need a designer, or they've been using a freelancer for a period of time and they're looking for a little bit more stability and quick responses, quick turnarounds, things like that. And it's ideal for those sort of companies. And then on the flip side of that as well, as we operate in, as I say, a couple of hours a day blocks, it's really scalable for businesses. So if somebody's got the budget for a full-time designer, they want to get somebody in. We have a lot of clients that take full days from us. And what we do there is we essentially build up a little mini team within our team based on skill sets and capabilities. So they get sort of the full benefits of it, really, and just build a team with inside White Label, really.
Got it. So you've got those kind of two offerings. Yeah, I was going to say, when you were talking about the freelancer model, it's the consulting always and professional services can veer into the recruitment world unless you're doing that. It's like you've got recruitment and then you can place people, but you don't, as a recruiter, guarantee the quality of the person, or you
Exactly.
put forward who you think would be a good candidate, but it's for the employer to vet that person and determine whether they're of the right quality for that organization. And then
Of
you get the
course.
sort of model where they bring on maybe white label, and then you'll give someone who you think, and you're going to stand behind the quality of the person, or the freelancer, but you're not going to review their work
Exactly. Yeah.
and make sure that
Exactly.
it's satisfactory quality. And also, but then you get to the next level, which is the team bit, which I think is what you were talking about, where you bring together a group of people with diverse skill sets, put a leader in charge of them, and then that leader reviews the work produced by the individuals on the team to make sure that it's of a consistent quality and they're all working together cohesively so that it's not inconsistent with one another.
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty much that. And like you say, it's having that people use. So essentially, we are set up like a traditional agency back end. So we've got our studio director and creative director. We've got our team leads. We've got all of our middleweight designers. However, like you say, it's sort of, we are very reliant on sort of singular plans of our designer and client relationship, because essentially if we put somebody in the middle, then it's a traditional agency, and that's not what really we're getting across.
Yeah.
So that the singular plans that people take with us, it is massively reliant on us assigning the right person, because you can imagine how many intricacies, because we're not, we work with a lot of large companies, but we also work with startups. We work with SMEs and companies that are, it's a really, really important thing to them. And they don't have thousands of people where they can just sort of, somebody can just fit in the team and hide amongst everyone. It's almost like we're coming on board with the teams, and we're talking to the founder, the marketing director, and there might only be a couple of others in the team. So it's really important to get that person, which also probably comes on to, it's really important for us to hire the right people to start with, and also train the people in the best way possible, to sort of make sure they're, essentially our designers do account manager roles as well, if you sort of look at it like a traditional agency. So it's a real sort of unique skill set as a designer. As I'm sure you've worked with designers in the past, that it's not necessarily something that you associate designers with, is account management as well. So it's a real sort of unique person that we have to take on board, which makes the hiring process quite difficult, actually.
Because they need those two skill sets. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you get, so what kind of design, if somebody's coming to White Label Studio, what kind of design do you guys focus on? Like, give a couple of examples of clients that you've worked with, or
Yeah.
projects that you've worked on that have
Yeah.
added value.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, the way we like to describe the design work that we actually do is, probably a large percentage of it is marketing collateral. So that can be, I think it's probably best just describing the most common relationship that our clients have with us, and to um, put it in a type of person or a type of client, it would probably be a marketing manager of a SME or a startup that's looking for continuous support with a wide range of things. So as opposed to being an agency that just focused on branding, and branding rollout, we essentially, as a business, we want long-term custom, and we want clients that are continuing to order from us. So what we do is, like, we approach businesses that they need um, 3 to 5 social posts a day. They need ebooks going on their website. They're heavily focused on paid ads. They need website refreshes, banners. So it pitch decks, things like that as well for a lot of companies. So we like to call it, as opposed to, as I say, singular projects. So you might not see any award-winning projects coming from us, and you won't see the really cool rebrands for Burger King or places like that you see with some of the big agencies in the UK. But what you will see is regular, consistent support. So as I say, it's very, very, very similar to that client having a designer working with them just remotely.
Yes.
And so that's the majority of the projects. And then one thing that sort of came in about 2 years ago now is that we didn't plan to do this, but we actually hired somebody who had video and animation skill sets. And essentially, as soon as that person came into the team and as soon as we started offering it to clients, the business just skyrocketed. And that's video editing of live footage. That's animated explainer videos. And well, you know yourself, it's
Well,
the way the world's going.
Today it's the full thing. You need, I was just thinking when you were talking through the various things that you do, I can see the value that brings, because everything has a consistent message. Your posts have a consistent message with your pitch decks, and everyone that has a touch point with the organization. If it's White Label Studio that, for example, that are doing the design, then they do all of the design rather than different companies doing different pieces, and then you get an inconsistent message, and people don't understand what the design ethic or like how to view the company through, what lens to view the company through. But then, to your point about video editing, I mean, it's like everything is digital, everything is very much video now, and it's like short clips, long clips. We'll do this long conversation, then I might clip it up and I'll put it onto multiple different channels to if it's key insights that come out of this conversation, and then that might drive people to the longer form content if they're interested. But there's a design element that goes over it, which is, and I'm just getting started, so I don't have all of the banners, but for anyone watching this, if you have like a live stream thing, you have design after your Jordan, I might speak to you actually about getting something. But what you're meant to do is have something around these videos, so it's the design that gives you the branding of the company. And then it's so important to have thumbnails that attract people to click on things, and then they get to the video, and there should be some design there. So it all kind of flows together with the videos and the design to help drive people towards the content. So I can see the cohesiveness there.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it's the way everyone's going is down essentially the video route. People are watching, like you say, the longer form content. We do a lot in the motion space as well. So as I say, sort of explainer videos, paid ads that you see on Instagram, Instagram Reels, Instagram Stories, Facebook Stories. As soon as we started offering that, it then became our service essentially to marketeers or entrepreneurs that wanted to start producing videos. It became so much more appealing and essentially became so much more cost effective, because essentially there's a load of designers in the UK. There's a few video editors, quite a lot, but nowhere near as many graphic designers. So it just falls hand in hand that it became a little bit more full service. And it came from the back of when we were essentially looking through companies' job roles in the UK, because we have to sort of have a look what people are looking for when they're hiring a designer to also help with our messaging. So we were looking, and a lot of people were putting After Effects, Premiere Pro, motion graphics and things like that within a job spec for a graphic designer, which hasn't always been the case. You sort of, as you probably know yourself, they've always been very, very separately. But when we're sort of hiring for roles now, we're making sure that they've at least had some experience within the video space, because we do offer it to our clients, and it's going to be the case of people are going to be ordering videos, people are going to be wanting little snippets, and it doesn't have to, companies don't do a lot of it all the time, some of our clients, sorry, but it's just having that skill set there is so handy, and it, as I say, just becomes a lot more valuable to our clients. Then we seem a lot more cost effective because we're offering this within what we're actually doing. So but yeah, it's definitely
was that so was that kind of like, that's an example where the market's telling you what they want and then you're supporting it? Exactly. Was that the same decision process for even starting with the model of putting a freelancer into the organization? Was that the grand vision? And we can get to that point around why you decided to start the company and the co-founding. I understand you guys are working together on the project. Correct. So we can get to that. But just on deciding initially with the idea? Was it we think that we need this, or was it a first client that told you this is what we want, and you just got your first customer like in that way and just kept rolling? How did it work?
So it was actually planned, to be honest, for quite a bit ahead of when we quite a bit before of when we actually started, probably about half a year before. And where it actually came from, as I say, I'll go into more detail after when we go into how it sort of started. But essentially, it was a headache for myself. I used to previously own a different business. However, I've always had the skill sets of being a designer, but this business was actually in print. So I actually was the MD of a print management company, and it was a struggling to hire scenario. And then what it was is it was merged with a couple of companies that were emerging around the world, operating in a subscription model. And what happened with that is they work in a very different way, because all of their staff members are external and they're based all around the world. And what we almost did was took a bit of my headache, took a bit of this business model that had just come into play, and thought, let's strip bits out of it. What are the benefits of both? And it also, to be honest, one of the main reasons, being very honest, was actually the cash flow side of things. And it sounds really odd, but the business that I came from, really small business, family run. There was 3 of us that worked there. It was a consistent battle to get payments in, find new customers, market ourselves, find new staff, sort of designer side of the business. And this, obviously, as you can imagine, after putting up with that for 3 years, it was I'm not doing that again. I'm definitely not. That was my, I loved running this business. I loved setting it up myself. I loved being that sort of MD. But if I just literally wrote down what I hate about the business, and that was it. It was chasing payments, chasing new customers, and it was a very tough battle. And then obviously seeing a subscription based model that was growing extremely quickly. As you can imagine, my eyes lit up a little bit and thought, that's what I want to do. So that's essentially why it was sort of, like you say, pushed by a merger of the market and also my own personal headaches.
And this is one of the major challenges. Thank you. I'm getting my coffee coming in.
Good.
That's one of the things that thank you so much. That's one of the things I think a lot of new boutique consultancy or studio or agencies, whatever word you want to use, struggle with in the beginning is, there's big agencies that you could go and work for as a middle manager. You could, you could go and get a good salary, and I've been in this position, and probably you've considered it at points when things have been tough, because it's so hard to set up one of these kind of small organizations.
It is.
Because there's so much that needs to be done at the beginning, and you have so few resources, because you need to build a brand. You need that is going to attract people to come and work for you. Then you need to recruit them, hire them, onboard them, do the HR. And then on the other side, you need to find the clients, and you need to sell to them and do the pitches. And you need to do all of the stuff on the client side to make sure that you've got the business coming in to support the people. And then you've got to deliver on the projects as well. So all of this stuff, and that once you're established, most of these structures and processes and things are in place. But for an early stage startup to get the ball rolling, it's kind of like the chicken and egg between the client and the individuals that are going to work on the team to help deliver, trying to get something like that off the ground. So I guess my question coming off the back of that is, have there ever been times where you wanted to just give up and just go get a job?
That's a very good question. 100%. If I'm being honest, I think at the start, it's very, very difficult. Very difficult to do. And I think I wouldn't say, when I say 100%, there've been thoughts in my head, but I think probably talking about both me and the other co-founder here, we were always very, very focused to do it. And it was probably more of a case of, because we were so focused at the start, there was a bit of a we're not giving up attitude. There's not a chance. Like, we very, very early on. So although we registered in June 2019, we actually only really kicked things off probably October, December 2019, which then leads right into a pandemic. And we saw a real nice quick growth in terms of, it was me and the other co-founder. We then hired 2 people January, February. So it's like looking like a really, really good start. We had the funds in to do so. There was no, we didn't put any personal funds in at all, or we didn't have any external funding. So it was a from scratch start.
Yes.
So it was very much.
That was just, it was you. Neither of you put in. So let's just back
No
up a little
money.
bit. Neither of you put
No
money
money.
in. You didn't have external investors, so it was basically client pays you and you pay the staff, and it's
Yep.
just the
Yep.
business is operating off of operating income from the very beginning.
From the very, very start.
Okay.
So it was it was, as you can imagine, that was another headache. And I think we always laugh about this, not sure whether we were extremely naive or it was just I don't know, just
Well, it makes you frugal, and I guess that even that story from the outset of your company as you grow and continue to grow, Bilingual Studio is it's a story that you can embed within the company, that about why it's important, because as companies get bigger and agencies get like more resources and bigger clients and bigger budgets, inevitably people start to be lax in terms of the their how frugal they are and how much they protect the resources of the company,
100%.
because they might do expense
100%.
budgets and that type of thing. So even that story, while it's like it was tough in the beginning, it's important to like embed that within the team culture, because just continuously remind everybody where we came from and how we started. That shouldn't change, because that's a kind of core thing about a company.
It is. Yeah, it is. And you're probably right in the fact that it probably doesn't get mentioned enough, to be honest. And it probably, I'd probably say 30% of the staff could tell you that. Not a lot of people know where it's actually came from. So that's one that we're definitely going to work on this year, of getting that story out there. But no, you're exactly right. I think it's we were very determined from right on, and it wasn't not wanting to put money in. It was, there wasn't money there, so I didn't have any money to put into the business. It was very much a right, sod it, we're going for this sort of thing, and it's gonna have to work. There's not really another choice. And like you say, I think that that attitude definitely got us off the ground and probably excelled us. So when it got to a point where there was 4 or 5 of us working here after sort of 6 months or so, it probably pushed us even further, because we were very clear from the start what we both wanted to do, and we just went for it, and it just gave us an extra boost. And I'm not saying there wasn't mistakes and lapses in concentration along the way, because there definitely was, but it sort of helped the consistency and the constant pushing with it. And like you say, resources as well. We know what it's like to operate off absolutely nothing. Like, I mean, there was a point where funny story about where it actually started. So after about a month of operating, we got our first office. So we're working from home to start with, and that was when we hired 2 people. And on the second person's first day, he was sharing a desk with the first designer that we took on board. And if I could tell you it was a small room, it was probably enough space for 2 desks, not even side by side. It was a little tiny box office, but it was that story gets told quite a lot, to be honest, around the team, because it was very, very funny actually for you. This new designer coming in, really looking forward to working in this exciting new agency, and he walks into this little room and we're all sat huddled around 2 desks. But no, it's all part of it, isn't it? Really.
I always think, what's the expression? Constraint breeds creativity. when you've got all the resources in the world, you don't need to be creative. But when you've got very few to work with, and you've just got a vision that you're going to make something work, you can take any problem and try and turn it into something to your advantage. Like only having one desk.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
And that's sometimes where the best ideas come from, is when you're in a sticky spot and then you're like, how can I, because you can't change the situation, but you can change how you see it. And that's often the only way out of the situation they're in.
Agree. No, I completely agree with that.
So how did you and your co-founder end up working together and deciding that you wanted to build a studio?
Again, bit of an odd story, really, or a different story. So we'd actually been best friends for about 20 years or so, maybe a little bit longer. So he lived opposite me throughout our childhood. So we've been really, really close friends for a very long time. And it was a bit of an odd, probably say, odd conversation that came about. So he had a really, really good job, to be honest, really, really high paying job. That it got to a point where we were both having these discussions about setting something up together. Like we'd talk about ideas fairly frequently, as you do. There's so many ideas going around your head at this point when you're trying to find something to do. And it came to a point where I'd actually, as I say, with White Label, I'd actually been planning this for a long time separately. I knew how much potential this business had from the start. I just knew in my head that it was sort of destined to take off. And the conversation brought up sort of other conversations, brought us onto White Label, where it was actually going to be something I was going to start on my own. And I think it was actually registered on my own to start with. And then what happened from there is that I had a conversation with Ollie, and we actually both came to the decision that if we're going to go for it, or if I'm going to go for it, if it's just me there, it's because essentially I'm a designer myself. I just sort of foresaw myself getting trapped within, I'll get a couple of clients in and it'll just be me working with those clients, and there's no further, so there's no one to drive the business forward, there's no one to be selling when I'm really busy, because obviously, as you can imagine, the first year and a half, although I was the co-founder, exactly, had to deliver. So I was working very, very closely with clients and overseeing the production, because it was a new industry for Ollie. Ollie isn't a designer or hasn't worked in this trade, so he couldn't necessarily manage our designers either, and almost play a bit of a creative director role. He couldn't do that to start with. He could now because of the time we've spent in it, but to start with, he couldn't. So it was one of those where, from previous experiences, doing it on my own was just a bit of it's a chicken and egg situation, really. It might have turned out the way it's turned out if it was by myself, but then I just looked at the situation and thought, is it going to be a lonely road doing it on my own? Have I got those backing funds to be able to sort of back it up and things like that? So
that, I mean, I can totally relate. I mean, it's like everybody had, well, not everybody, but some people have. I'll talk for myself.
yeah.
Like, I have a part of me that has an ego and thinks you can do it by yourself.
Same.
And whenever you have an idea and it's your vision and you came up with it in your head, then you're like, well, I don't need anybody else to help me with this, because I'm just going to take this thing that was in my mind and I'm going to put it out into the world and turn it into a reality, and it's going to be all my drive and determination. But I mean, the reality is that you've only got so many hours in a day, and you've also got a certain personality and certain skill set that is good for a certain group of things, but you're not going to be good at everything, and you don't have enough time for everything, and you might not want to do everything. And there's some things that you're just not interested in. So, and you don't need to keep everything. So the full pie to yourself, if you can share it out a little bit between other people. and it's also just more fun, like being
Exactly.
with people. And I'm sure like that sounds like an awesome story, you and your like best mate from growing up.
Mm,
That's the sort of thing you want, because you get to hang out all the time as well, and you
exactly.
can be
Yeah,
really
exactly.
close with one another.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with the skill set side of things as well. I think I was probably, as I was fairly young when I was setting it up, I was probably very naive, and it's something we always say here with a lot of things. It's just sort of drop the ego a little bit as well, and it was a case where you have to drop the ego because, and it's just a bit of self actualization really as well, isn't it? It's we're not perfect at everything. We might be very very good at a few things, and obviously a lot of people are very very good at a few different things, and it's just building up that skill set. And I think it was that when we were having the conversation about it, and sort of almost discussing what we're going to do, because we were both so focused from the start with it, we sort of were quite honest with that. We had to adapt with a few things, but quite honest with our skill sets personally. So it led to a point of essentially just it just all came together at the right time. And there's as I say, a lot of skills that Ollie has that I don't have, and vice versa. And it sort of, we just got on and cracked on with it. And we knew what those skills were anyway. There didn't really have to be much discussion about it. I think we knew from day one. It was like, right, you're doing this, I'm doing that, go. And from there, it just, like you say, it's one of those where is dropping your ego, but it's also working with your best mate every single day, building something that you're both really excited about. And yeah, there's been times where we're not obviously thrilled with each other because we're sat next to each other all day, but actually when you work it out, we do have a really good laugh when we're doing it, and we try. There's been stressful times, as you can imagine, but you try not to take it too seriously, and you do try and enjoy the process, and sort of roll with it. And as long as, what we always say, we use the term grafting, as long as we're both grafting, it's absolutely fine, and there's never any qualms with it really.
Yeah, as long as nobody's slacking off and not doing their best.
Exactly.
And also people aren't going to do things perfect, and there's going to be
No, no.
mistakes in the way.
Mm.
And you know, if somebody's trying their best to figure something out, and then if it's not working out, then you have a conversation about it, and maybe it's the different perspective that gives you the different direction that you need to go in.
Exactly.
And that's when you
Exactly.
need to drop your ego as well and say,
That's it.
accept it's not worth this.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's never you need to, like, I always think that's why part of the reason that I'm doing this unplanned thing is because, you know, like conversation like this are unplanned, and we'll take it wherever we want to take it, and we'll talk about whatever we're interested in talking about in that moment. But I didn't have a grand plan before we had this conversation even about where it was going to go. And I don't have a grand plan about, you know, where I take anything. It's more about, you know, grafting, as you say, working hard on something. And if you're working hard, opportunities present themselves to you, and then but don't keep your head down too much. Keep your eyes up while you're grafting. Keep looking up and being like, oh, that's an interesting opportunity. I should take that one, while also I'm deep in what I'm doing right now. You need to do both, look up and down at the same time.
100%, completely agree. And that's, as you say, that's the benefit to what you're doing, is that you're speaking to entrepreneurs across the UK, people from different backgrounds and different places. Obviously, doing it while being in different parts of the world must be absolutely amazing. But like you say, you will find these opportunities, and I think that's a really good point about not keeping your head down. And we always do that as well. It's finding, especially from our perspective, we try and, like, on that respect, try and find new ways to do things as well. Like, we've had things that have worked for us in the past, they've worked well, sort of outbound sales activity and things like that. And we try and almost don't, like, ignore things. So, like, instead of probably prime example, as a business, we haven't done a lot of outbound cold calling, when actually ours is a really really easy phone call to have. And our clientele is quite, I can spot somebody who's a perfect client a mile away. So it's actually a really really easy thing.
So
And
who is your perfect client? Like a small, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we've actually got, I'd say we've got three perfect clients, and we can almost put them into sort of categories, which is what we actually do. So the first one, I'd say anyone in a marketing role, sort of probably that has the responsibility. So whether it's a marketing manager, marketing director, or marketing executive that has responsibility of the marketing for like an SME, and I'd probably say 11 to 50 company size, that's very much suited for. I think anything past that, it usually gets into the point where they need to hire internally and they've got a lot on. So, and that can be at any industry as well, because of we're producing content for people and we're designing things. It doesn't have to follow. That doesn't have to be a manufacturing company that only does brochures. It can be a fintech startup that does Google Display Network ads all the time, and paid ads online, things like that. The other one's actually agency owners, so hence the white label name. We work really closely with a lot of agencies around the UK that almost use us as a bit of a outsourcing to another agency option. Obviously, we have to keep very quiet about who that is.
Yes.
However, we work on their behalf from small agency to large agency as well. We work with a lot of big local agencies that sort of 40, 50 man agencies. And we're almost like our designers are like plugged into their team essentially. And then the final one's entrepreneur, new startup, getting off the ground, probably with a bit of seed funding behind them. Because again, as somebody that started from with no backing, I definitely didn't have £500 to spend a month, or not even that to spend in a month. So someone like that is perfect. So they're the three audiences we target really.
Have you ever? I mean, it'd be interesting. Have you always wanted to do the agency business side, or did you? Or I think what I'm getting at is, there's one thing I always found when I was doing consulting, or when I do a project for a company. I love partnering with them, helping deliver on what they need, and being clear about what the expectations are, so that we're not going. We have a long-term partnership and we don't argue with one another, and we deliver something awesome. But a part of me always feels like you don't own the thing. You don't own the outcome or the deliverable, or whether it's a success. I always remember this video I found obscurely on YouTube, on the internet, and it was Steve Jobs talking to a group of kids or students at university, and he was asking them what they wanted to do with their lives. And they were putting up their hands, and one person put up their hand and said, a consultant. And he was like, oh God. And then they were like, oh, what's so bad about that? And basically he gave the analogy of a consultant being like a photographer, where you invite all your friends round to your house, and then you take them into the room, the living room, and you've taken pictures of fruit, and say you show your friends, I've taken pictures of bananas, I've taken pictures of like apples, or peaches and pears. So you're showing them all this 2D image of the things that you've worked on, but without owning the outcome and the deliverable, you don't really get to taste the fruit. So you don't get the 3D texture of it. So I guess, is there any part of you guys that wants to, be more kind of, I guess, is it consumer facing or end customer facing, and own the outcome of the deliverables that you're actually producing in the design side?
Yeah, I really like the way you just explained that. I'll have to watch that Steve Jobs clip, because that's actually pretty much bang on. I've never heard that before. So short answer is yes. So when we very first started, the idea was to only target agencies, and we thought it mainly because although it was a print company, we class print as agency because it's for different companies on their behalf. So when we probably about 6 months in, we essentially we essentially just decided that we're not only going to target agencies and we're going to target direct businesses because of that reason. We had no portfolio. We couldn't tell people we're working on stuff. Although the agencies we started with were very, very small that we're working with, and being honest, there wasn't a lot of work that we probably want to share, as you can imagine. We decided that from early on, and we do work with a lot of direct. We have got a lot of direct work that we can do. On the flip side of that, some of the agencies that we work with now, they're big, big agencies, and we work with big, big brands and also run the whole creative for some really cool campaigns that goes out on this agency's behalf that there isn't a lot of saying from the agency side. It's a lot of our team stuff. So in
Yes.
that respect, 100% that we've got stuff that I can't even mention the name of the projects we've worked on, but even just putting that out there to the world and people seeing the stuff we've worked on, we would be in a completely different position as an agency. So it's very annoying. However, in the same respect, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the agencies that we work with, and we wouldn't have grown so quick because we're so geared up to working with agencies because of the name in itself that I think it would be bad to almost look back and go, oh, I wish we wouldn't have done that, or I wish from the start we would have been consumer facing, because that pays the bills. I'd probably say the best way of putting it as
and it's practical. It's like you know what I just explained is like the visionary and missionary approach to business, which is awesome. But if you've got to pay your staff, then you've got to do the work, the bread and butter. So
exactly.
Very often people take this sort of black and white approach to many things where it's like, oh yeah, I'm on a mission and I'm going to, I'm a customer centric company and I'm going to, change the world with this innovative technology that I'm going to promote to the world. But, like often if you take too much of a kind of blinkered view where you're only going down that route and you don't take the practical approach of how do I meet payroll this month, then you're not going to be able to achieve your long-term visions for where you want to go. So it's always just a balancing act between kind of mercenary, missionary, short-term practicality, long-term vision, and trying to, like, being in the co-founder position that you're in, it's all about trying to balance those two aspects and not trying to be blinkered and think that it's just one or the other.
I agree. Yeah, completely agree with that. And it's probably that key sort of phrase that you said in there, and it was like trying to meet payroll every month. And obviously, like, as you can imagine, that's the main goal. Like, that's what we've got. That's one thing, the probably only thing. Like, we can miss our own payments off, we can miss our own salaries off. That's fine. We can't miss payroll ever. And like you say, it's so important to balance those things out and balance the working with the agencies and working with stuff that we can't share. And again, it's sort of, for a lot of designers as well, it's dropping a bit of pride really and just saying, like, we know you've worked on this, don't worry, we know you're absolutely amazing, but we can't share this, sorry, sort of thing. And it gets frustrating, but also I'd say we're seeing a big flip towards a lot of direct customers using us, to be honest, anyway. So I think as we progress, as we start to branch out into doing a little more niche projects, even sort of like we've just sort of essentially placed 2 people from our team into a separate department that are going to be managing project by project, big rebrands, big website projects, things like that. So that's going to be the exciting stuff that's going to grow alongside the business, and we're going to be putting stuff out there that we can share. But it is it's probably not so frustrating for the business itself, probably more so for the individuals as well, because I'm constantly asked, can I share this, can I share this, and I'm like, NDA, sorry, I'm really sorry, you can't put it anywhere. And for that individual, you imagine if obviously, touch wood, they don't go anywhere, but you think if they were going for a position somewhere else or going to work somewhere else and they had to show this portfolio of work and they're sat in an interview going, oh, I've worked on Nike, I've worked on BMW, I've worked on Coca-Cola, and they're like, show me then, and they can't show anything. It must be really, really frustrating. So
That is
yeah,
challenging. Yeah.
yeah, that must be, because like you say, you can't probably, like you say, it's a 2D image. It's just somebody showing you a logo, as opposed to showing you the insane video campaign that they launched for Nike. Do you know what I mean? And it's stuff like that it must be really really tough. But as I say, it's transitioning. We'll be able to share a lot more work. On the same respect, bread and butter stuff. That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's where we came from. And we've got to remember that.
And also it's important for people to do their own, if they're, they're working on things for clients, but that is proprietary materials that are being produced, so they don't own it, because and it's like, I don't own some of the technology that I've built for massive organizations, or design new processes, or it's not
Yeah.
design in the traditional sense, but it's work and thought process that you've gone through. But unless you're putting something out, even if it's your staff, or anyone's staff that's kind of thinking about that, and how do I build a portfolio that I can show to future employers or future clients or anyone else that's interested in. There is something called the internet, and you have the ability to publish things by clicking a button. So produce stuff in your spare time, and have something that you can show, and then you can talk about these big brands that you've worked with. But people can see quality from
Exactly that.
self-produced content anyway, and they can extrapolate that to, well, what can they do for me, and what have they probably done for other organizations as well. So, but unless you build up your own personal brand and your own content, or in whatever form it is, whether it's music or it's design or it's video conversations like this, or insights, that type of thing, unless you're doing that yourself and you have a presence online and you've done it on your own volition rather than being paid to do it by somebody else who needs it, then that you're in a very difficult position. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm making a lot of this content, is because there'll be a track record of, I think it's more admirable when when I see that somebody has just decided that they want to do something just for the sake of doing it, and just for the creative aspect of putting something out there for the world to receive and judge and critique, and give you more value, give you more feedback back as to how it could be improved. That's so admirable. And when you see people that have got a track record of doing that, you're like, oh, that person wants to has a good work ethic. You can judge them on their creativity. So
I'd completely agree with that. We pull our hair out sometimes on interviews, and when people are applying for roles, because there'll be little notes in people's applications saying, we didn't really work on much nice stuff, so I haven't really got a portfolio. And you imagine, as a designer, we go based on it. Often, being completely honest, I don't read a CV. I look at the portfolio, glance over the CV, and meet the person, because for me, it's about quality of work and the person themselves. If I join a call and they're likable, they're good at speaking, they can hold a really nice conversation, and they've got drive, then that's all I need to know. And for me, when we're getting designers apply and they've gone above and beyond, they've redrawn the Nike logo, they've designed a version of a Spotify app, things like that. To me, that's just like, okay, this is so impressive that they've just gone off their own back. And to be honest, it's not even difficult to do. Everyone's got spare time. If it's something that you're passionate about and you've got that drive, then you imagine how much work could be produced in a year. You could be doing so much nice work to then go into a new job role, or even set up your own agency, set up your own freelance work with 365 pieces of content that you've designed. The business would just skyrocket straight away, because it'd look like you've been running for years. You'd look like an established agency, just with dummy projects that you probably really enjoy doing, because I know I do. I'd love doing stuff like that, and in fact, I actually sit and do that in my spare time as well, just to sort of progress my skills. It's fun, yeah. Like, enjoy doing it, and as you are, you're a creator, and like, obviously in the reflecting that into the design world, we're creators, so we should enjoy doing that essentially. And
You're,
it is fun.
I mean,
I love doing it.
it shouldn't be if it's something that you're just doing to get paid every day, and you're dragging yourself through the day and you're forcing yourself to do some task that you don't want to do, then you're not doing life right.
Exactly, I agree.
you're,
I
you're
completely
not
agree.
doing it. You're not don't do it. Like, choose
Mm,
something else. Like,
mm,
because if it's something where you're at work but you're also at play, then it's more enjoyable. Right now, I'm enjoying having this conversation with you. It might be beneficial in the future because we're creating something together.
exactly,
And
exactly.
but very often people don't have that impetus to do something, creative, and then because they're just not interested in it, and that's fine. But
Yeah,
that's totally fine. But find the
yeah,
thing
yeah.
that you are interested in doing, and the thing that you would do if you're not. I'm not getting paid for this conversation, but
Exactly, exactly,
I'm doing it
exactly.
because I'm interested in talking to you about your business and finding out about how it works and your story. And I
Mm,
think it might help other people watching this. And
mm.
that's the sort of thing that people gravitate towards, and that's the sort of thing that and it's because I'm interested, but I know other people would be interested too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with that.
So what are the plans? So I've got another question. See
Yeah,
that you mentioned early stage seed startups. So what
mm-hmm.
kind have you, is it, I know that you're mainly working with the agencies. So,
Mm.
is there any interesting companies that are doing work in the kind of early stage space that you have worked with that you think are interesting? And I guess while you're thinking about that, one of the cool things about working with early stage companies is that you can grow with them. So you can
Mm.
get in with them at an early stage. And that's probably an
Mm.
awesome kind of approach. You guys are early in starting up the studio. They'll be early stage and they've got some investment, and you can kind of grow together. So
Agree.
that's an awesome
Yeah,
approach as an early stage agency.
yeah, yeah, and I think we probably realised that after um we start. There was a couple of companies that we worked with. There's some that work with us now, and they're not. Some of them aren't even that early stage. They've just had. I just know they've had funding. There was one, and they actually don't work with us anymore, mainly because the design requirements aren't there because they've blew up through something else. And it's it's a company called Why Hungry, they're called. So they're on Dragon's Den,
Why hungry?
and
Cool.
Why Hungry, yeah, and I know one of the founders there, or in fact both of the founders, and it was we only actually worked with them for a short period of time, but they keep every now and again they keep appearing with more and more stuff that they want us to produce for them. But they're on Dragon's Den, and their business just blew up, and I know they got a fair amount of funding to start that, and it's not a surprise, to be honest, because their business model is absolutely incredible. They do like sort of they get chefs to come in and cook for you essentially, but it sounds expensive when you say it, but it's actually in a really affordable way with loads of different cuisines. So it sort of came about during the lockdown period, and throughout that, it just, as you can imagine, scaled massively. There was stuff that was already cooked and then delivered, I think, but they were a really nice one to work with. We work a lot in the food and drink space actually when we're working direct with customers. So there's a beer company actually that have just started working with us that I actually haven't had much say with. I just see the work going on, so I barely know the owners of the company at all. But I see how excited our team get when they're working with this cool beer company because they're doing beer can designs for snowboard festivals, and
Oh,
they're pairing up with like, I think this company paired up with like Dizzy Rascal and produced their own beer. And it's just like stuff like that is really exciting, and it's they're scaling massively, and you can see as they're growing. And that's when you talk about scaling with us, or us scaling with them. It's completely right because, as I mentioned at the start, people work with us in increments of 2 hours. So you imagine if somebody starts with us 2 hours, they then turn on paid ads and they need to be doing 3 different creatives every single day to test audiences. They then need double time from us. Then they go to 4 hours. And quite often we've got people that take, I don't know, maybe like 12 to 14 hours a day from us, made up of like 4 or 5 people around the team. So we've just grown with them. They just need that much content, and they start off, the conversation always starts off like, really like you, really like what you're about, really like your work, but we don't have loads of stuff on at the minute. I'm going to start with you anyway, because I need to get something done. And then you sort of, again, because I don't have a lot of conversations directly with these business owners, but then you sort of hear things going on in our Slack channel that they've just took more time and gone with somebody else. And then you think back and you go, hold on, they started with us, and I'm pretty sure the owner told me that he didn't have a lot of work on and he might be with us for just a month or so. And then before you know it, there's 4 people in our team working for them. And when it was just one guy, it's like 30 of them sat there within like 6 months. And it's I love stuff like that. I really love those sort of stories. And it's like I say, it's helping us grow massively with the companies that start with one and grow. Because I think you think one client turns into what would be 4, 5, 6 clients just through one person, just through them growing with seed funding and us doing a good job. Then it's absolutely amazing, really.
And it's just super inspiring to work with entrepreneurs who are starting their own business, and they've spotted a gap in the consumer market in particular. The consumer business to business is like, you find one person, you have a good relationship with them, and then you do work for them and you can grow the team. It's a hard business, but consumer facing is like the market. It's like the market decides, and it's not like one person. It's like you've got to find a really unique thing that, you know, nobody else is delivering, when everybody's trying their hardest to offer things, but you've got to find that thing, and hundreds and thousands and millions of people have got to buy into this kind of unique thing that you've delivered. So when you meet somebody who's tapped into that and has a good idea about what people want and what they're interested in, then it's super inspiring to work with them as a business partner.
I agree. It's I always think that it's a different ball game. I've never been into the sort of B2C space at all, direct to consumer, and I can imagine it comes with its own headaches. But on the same respect of that, somebody to find that little gap in the market, they've got to be fairly intelligent, and they've got to understand people very, very well. And like you say, it's very, very impressive, to be honest. And you sort of, it's always one of those where you sort of, especially if they're a client of ours coming on board, and I'm sat on board and them on a call and meeting them and talking to them, you sort of get a little bit jealous. You're like, oh, that's a really good idea. That is, I wish I would have thought of that. That's a really good idea. Like, hats off to you.
Yeah. But you can go on the journey with them doing what you're doing, which is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, Jordan, I think that was a great conversation. I really appreciate you spending the time making this video with me, and I'm sure we'll catch up again in another few months and see how you guys are getting on with the work.
I'm sure we will. Okay, thanks. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Lovely to speak to you. Thank you.
No worries. All right. Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.